Hey, so I'm doing a video in the dark, and just because I wanted to share an insight that dawned on me tonight that is, I was coming home from the gym and I thought, I got a cool insight that came to me. And that insight is that we are not negative, and we are not our negativity. And even if we have sometimes a bad attitude or a negative attitude, or even if we can be or seem repellent to people, we're not negative. And I know that we're just kind of saying negative as a catchphrase, as an umbrella term for people, almost like when you say illegals. They're not illegal, they're people, but it's just a thing that catches on. And I think the illegals is even less apt because they're an immigrant that happens to be illegal. But whatever catches with our naming of things sometimes. And so when you think of somebody that's negative, I think really what we mean is a person with a negative attitude, or someone who is maybe immature, someone who has some work to do, and they might act in a negative way or have a negative attitude. It's true, but it's not fair and it's not accurate. And I think I'm arguing that it's not appropriate to call them negative. And I think we should just explore this and just reconsider what we call people, and especially what we call ourselves. Because if we get the feedback from people that we're negative, we can use that positively and say, is this true? Am I negative? Am I the problem? That kind of thing. And of course, sometimes we are, of course. And if you're getting enough feedback, it's probably worthy of note and worthy of reflection, worthy of doing the work and asking other people and seeing how other people maybe have overcome negativity. That's one of the most worthwhile pursuits in my life. And it's been a hard uphill battle, and I've done a lot of resisting and being a lot of being negative, or being in negative moods, or having negative attitudes, or having a negative worldview, or a cynical worldview, or a judgmental of groups. Whole swaths of the population were this way, and I was prejudging, and I was projecting negativity, or being a snob, or assuming snobbery on their part. So yeah, negativity can really waste your time and really alienate you from others, and uh, push people away and make one's life experience feel and seem and be negative. You can have a negative experience where you're not feeling joy ever. You're not feeling closeness and intimacy. You don't feel like you belong. All sorts of things can come from feeling or being negative. But I want to make the distinction, not to be pedantic, even though some may argue it is, but to say just because we may be afflicted with negativity, we may have an attitude that is often negative. We may be immature. We may be being unkind to ourselves. We may be being judgmental to others. And that whole experience to others may say, hey, Jim's negative, whatever. Fair enough. But I think we should explore it and say, wait a second. This is a being, a good soul in there. This is probably a kind person inside. Maybe has traumas, maybe has work to do, but they're not negative. They may be being negative. They may seem negative. They may think negatively. But I just want to argue that hopefully we can and could and should look at people anew that we think of as negative and say underneath that negativity is a person, and that person themselves is not negative. And that's probably a terrible feeling, to feel like people are calling you negative, just like calling somebody an illegal, as if their dominant or most important characteristic was their legal status in the nation. Not that they were human or breathing or had feelings, or wants or desires or a soul or a purpose or anything else, but that they were an illegal beneath us, below us. And I think we can do that same beneath us, below us thing with with negative and saying that this person or that person is negative, and not catching the fact that the negativity may surround them and they seem to pervade them. It may dominate their personality. It may dominate their attitude, their worldview, their outlook. It may dominate the choices they make, and they may say and do negative things. But it doesn't make them negative. It just means they're in a negative state way too much. And I think we can also glean from this insight that if someone is in a negative state too much, we can assume that this is just a trait of theirs, that they're just negative. But I don't think that's fair. Like, nobody has a trait of being negative. It's just a behavior pattern, or, these things are malleable. No one has a negative attitude that could not and cannot be adjusted, made less negative. And what I found with people that I think of that are really negative is that usually they're feeling really unloved. Usually they've been hurt really bad. Usually they feel really isolated. Often they're very, very hard on themselves. And they may have had a parent or a lover or both or all of the above that were very hard on them. Or they may have been coddled and then are finding the world to be kind of like cruel. So maybe somebody has a trait where they're negative, where they're really just like that. But I'm just saying, even if you have a trait, I can't see someone being intrinsically negative. That these are just maladaptive behavior patterns and attitudes that make someone express themselves that way, or make someone cynical enough that they don't believe that anyone's good, and that they don't like anything. They don't like any kind of music or any kind of art, or they don't believe that they can have joy or believe that they can be happy, and they have absolutely no spiritual life, so they don't believe that they can have meaning necessarily. And again, people that are atheists can totally have meaning. I'm not making any value judgments there, but just to say that sometimes as someone struggles in life, they end up having a spiritual awakening where they're saying, hey, what am I here for? What's this planet for? What even if it's existentialism, it doesn't have to be about some god. But when I say spiritual, just meaning like imbuing life with meaning. And we can use spirituality as an umbrella term for doing that. It doesn't have to be about God or gods, the supernatural per se. So when you add up all of these happenstances in a person's lives, all these inputs, a person can be afraid, they can be very hurt, they could be very traumatized, or they could have hurt others and feel like, oh no, I'm going to do it again, or whatever it is. It can lead to this kind of coefficient of, or like quotient that is just churns out negativity as you add and subtract and multiply or whatever, all of the experiences and feelings and pieces and parts and ideas and worldview and the culture they grew up in and the time and their financial status and their health status and every upbringing and everything else, what comes out feels negative. Ugly words, ugly attitudes, repellent behavior. It would be easy, it'd be all too easy to just check them off the list. Oh, they're a negative person. And then we just move on. And we reject them. And we should probably reject the behaviors or the attitudes. We should also say, gosh, I don't like how I feel when I'm around this person. It's okay to want to go away from negativity. Negative words, negative attitudes, it can bring you down. And you don't really owe people that you think of as negative anything, unless you think you do. Nobody, I'm not saying that we should save somebody that's not asking to be saved, but that we should be careful with the words we choose, because the way we frame negative people and casting them off as just negative people, and assigning them that value, and then usually moving on, and then judging them and maybe talking about them to other people, um, just kind of is self-reinforcing to the point where we reject them and we can feel better about ourselves because we're less negative than them. And sometimes I've seen people do that at different social functions where I go, and I'm thinking, sometimes I see people that are very invested in thinking that this other person is negative when I recognize negative attitudes within that person as well. And I know I've got mine. Oof. But I don't think of myself as negative, and I'm sure some people do. And I know that I have been more negative in the past. I know that I have been more asleep, more unaware of how I was being, how it felt to be around me, how it felt to be in my presence and close to me, how it felt to date me or to be in my family. And I look back, sometimes with regret and say, gosh, I was really a drag at this time when I dated this person, or these friends had to really deal with my negativity, or, similar. Working with me must have been negative when I had this attitude, or when I was this level of maturity before I'd realized this. But often what helped me with negativity might have been luck or happenstance. I read a book or something, but usually it was a loving and kind person who took it upon themselves to interact with me anyway, or to take my conscious or unconscious and cries for help seriously, and to try to impart wisdom, guidance, information, tools, gadgets, or whatever that might help me. A book that might help me, like Power versus Force is one that, just help me. It just helped me be less negative. It just helped me feel good and helped me believe that maybe there was a way to become happy or a meaning for this life. And so it was almost like some people in life, and I've had a few of them, knew how to or were willing to attempt to turn on a light switch for me. And it was sometimes a great pains for them. And then I'm thinking 5, 10, 25 or more years later, I'm kind of on the other side of that. I still struggle with negativity. I still worry. I still lose time and effort and energy, and um, get hung up in fear or judgment, anger, or any number of things that we call negative and that are a drag on us, waste our time, behaviors, wasteful behaviors, etc. But I look back and I say, gosh, I have people now that need me and want me to be around them and counsel them and coach them and hear them and accompany them through their struggles and sorrows. And when they don't know what to do, they call me. And I've always had that, just because I was sensitive and empathetic, and people knew that they could like tell me their worst, like feeling suicidal or whatever. I was that guy for some reason, which has always been very, very flattering, very, very much. I definitely derived a lot of meaning from being the guy that people could talk to at the darkest place. That's an honor. And at those times, probably I still had some negativity that was maybe dominating me, or I didn't know better. But now I feel like people seek, certain people, maybe a handful of them, seek me and my guidance and me and my positivity. And I'm thinking, gosh, they're going through so much, and they're coming to me, and I'm going through a lot. And so clearly, I'm managing it so much better than I used to, because we all face things. We all age, we're all dying, we all get injured, we all get sick. We all have love and we lose. We all have the potential for addictive behaviors, and we all have jobs we like or don't like, and lovers that come and go, and family members that live and die, and some we agree with and some we don't. We're all dealing with politics and the environment and any number of health issues and social issues, and etc. So the negativity piece is something that we all contend with, but you just know there's some people that they're so positive, and everybody wants to be around them, and everybody wants a piece of that. And so the fact that anybody comes to me with any troubles is kind of saying, hey, these people at least think I'm positive in some way. So again, those people that were helping me all those years ago, and I look back and I say, gosh, I didn't really change much back then. Or that must have been frustrating for them. Well, now, 20 years later, I say, gosh, I'm maybe that elder to some extent in certain communities in some ways that people are looking to when they're desperate, or when they're sad, or when they're hurting really bad, or just when they don't know what to do, or when they just want some guidance, and they come to me. And so it's like some of that's because I did the work. Yeah, some of the work, whatever. But some of that's because other people did the work for me and gave to me and helped me hang on when I was absolutely in physical, emotional, psychological, spiritual, developmental crisis, and all of those things at once. And in lots of ways, I still am, exactly. But maybe I've got a frame of reference for it. I've got some more wisdom. I've survived through toil and through confusion, and I've lost and then loved again. And you survive these calamities, and you feel maybe a little galvanized by some of them. So I've got I guess part of me just is feeling like saying thank you to people that put in the work with me. And when you think you're doing the work, you think I did the work. But I think of all these kind of mentors and healers and coaches and therapists and friends and lovers who gave of their time and their knowledge and their wisdom, and maybe even suffered my negativity in order to give perspective, in order to flip that light switch on so I could see. Maybe that seeing didn't magically solve the problem, but it gave me perspective. Perspective is just a vantage point, a greater ability to perceive. So sometimes it's not just about magically solving our problems like the lottery or something like that, but that once we understand it better, we can live through it, we can contextualize it. Our suffering can have meaning, can help us grow. We can learn more information and knowledge and outgrow this suffering. So, coming up on my 50th birthday, I'm kind of thinking, wow, I have some wisdom, I have some perspective. I can clearly be negative. I can clearly complain about my problems, or about people that I think of as negative, or people that have caused me harm, or what have you, kicked me when I was down, whatever I think it is. But then I can kind of look at them too and say, isn't that interesting? They're really suffering within themselves. And even though I might personalize the insult, especially when they're intended as such, I can just say, gosh, that person doesn't have much perspective right now. They're attacking me, and I'm not doing a thing to them. They might be dealing with old traumas, and they might perceive this as the way to do it. Or, it's distorting their capacity to make sense out of their life. And I know how that feels. I know how it feels to hurt and to be blind to what's going on and to be confused. And I think sometimes we can look around and when people are taking their things out on us too, and say, maybe I'm safe enough to take it out on. And that can be a compliment too, in the same way it's a compliment when people consciously bring their garbage to you to deal with, and I willingly, and when I have the energy, help with that. But maybe sometimes when people are bringing their garbage to you in a way that's more of an attack and blaming and projecting it onto you, that you can take that as a compliment too, and just realize that somehow you're safe enough and you don't want it to continue, and have everybody dump their stuff on you, but it can be an honor to interact with people even in ways that you wouldn't request and wouldn't appreciate and would prefer it to be differently. And I know I'm kind of getting off on a tangent there, but and then you can see them, like, if you don't overreact, like I've been, reacting and pushing back and giving it right, putting it back in people's faces that have attacked me for years and years, and I still do, but what I'm finding is that sometimes I pull some punches and then they kind of come back to their senses, and you can tell that that pulling of punches paves the way for a future, because like, we shouldn't have to be mistreated by people. And like, so when people are like married to or dating somebody who's horrible to them, I'm like, leave them, come on, get on with your life. But there's some people in our lives that we just have to interact with. Like, let's say you had a child with someone, you're going to have to interact with the father or mother and their family to some extent in some ways for the rest of your life. So not everybody's somebody you can just get rid of. And so we have to find a way to have like a detente with the people that we kind of must interact with in order to see our whoever. And so those can be these kind of magical, interesting teaching relationships. Can you still have empathy for somebody who absolutely overreacts with you and attacks you and generalizes about you and does all these things, and you're like, this isn't even me? Like, then you can say, oh my gosh, that person is so traumatized, and they hurt so much, and it's got them so blinded. I really feel for them. And that's easy for me to say, like, as a guy. It's not like I'm dealing with anybody like that could like beat me up, or I don't feel as threatened as like a small woman might feel who's dealing with a very traumatized larger man that's bullying and pushing around. Like, these things are very different from each other. So to me, it's easy to kind of turn the other cheek, as I feel confident and secure in my body. So I know this is a long way of going about saying we're not negative just because we can be overcome by our negativity, and we're not, it's not fair to rubber stamp us and each other and ourselves and our enemies with these labels of negative. And I do, again, to reiterate, I think it's okay to go away from what we experience as negativity. This person's always talking negative, or they give off a negative vibe, or they make me feel uncomfortable. Of course, go in the other direction. But I think when possible, when comfortable, when safe, that we should look back and say, what is it about them that's so negative? Do they have a bad attitude, and could I mention that to them? Or could I model positive behavior to them, positive attitude? Does my head look like it's like oblong? I can't make that go away. Anyway, so I just want us to look deeper for that and say, like, is Jim, this fictitious Jim, like, really negative? Like, is he really malevolent? Just looks like my head like gets bigger over here. Or is this just a person who's overcome with a negative attitude, or who's never learned like positive thinking, or like kind of no one's reality testing it for him, or he gets away with it because he's rich, or he's attractive, or somehow gets positive feedback for it, or no one challenges this, or something like that, or are they abusive and do they need therapy, or what have you? There's so many levels, and so I'm not trying to say we should all befriend and go hang out with people that are dangerous for us or who make us feel unsafe. But that, especially in a cancel culture kind of society and time, it's so easy to just kind of stamp someone as like reject, return to sender. And the person I was thinking of when I started recording this is somebody who's beautiful and sweet and funny and warm and interesting and very, very traumatized, and who I felt linked to and enjoyed very much that linking. And then also realized that that linking wasn't going to last, especially due to the maybe unhealed trauma of the person, and that they readily admitted and were wanting to get help about, but just couldn't find the money, time, or the wherewithal to quit doing certain things and start doing others. And so, but they're not negative, you know. That person's not negative. That person gets hung up in negativity and judgment and projection, and was really hurt by people. It came by that negativity, honestly. And that person gets scared, and that person gets judgmental or doesn't know what to do or what have you. But I'm so glad that that insight came to me, because that person's beautiful. And, I want good things for them. So maybe when somebody's negative and we just kind of brand them like that, we kind of act like they're beyond help, or they're not deserving of this or that, or that they're negative in their core. And, maybe some people are. I don't want to get too deep into the philosophy of it, because I don't know what the nature of it, but I just want to act like everybody's innocent in nature, and then gets damaged, mistreated, harmed, institutionalized, whatever, and then has whatever psycho-emotional programs going. And so, find your safe comfort zone with people, do whatever you need to do, but maybe reconsider whether they are negative, whether you are negative, or whether you're running some negative attitudes or programs or beliefs or systems or behavior patterns, or again, like addictions and stuff, things that make you feel negative, like a hangover feels negative. So maybe that's food for thought. Maybe we can rediscover ourselves and our innocence and the innocence of others via not being so quick to brand someone as negative when we've had a negative experience with them, they've got a negative attitude, they make us feel, or we feel a certain way around them. We could take a little bit of ownership of that and say, okay, I feel negative around this person. That doesn't mean they're negative, or they sure talk negative a lot, but I wonder what's beneath that. I wonder how they got to be that negative in their attitude, in their words, and if there's any hope for them, and if I could inspire them by being positive, or with a hug, or showing interest, or challenging their negative assumptions or beliefs or words. And you might start a process with them similar to the process that many tried and successfully started with me, even though it may not have looked or seemed or felt like the process was happening, or like it was really underway, or like it would ever get anywhere, or what have you. Enough people did enough heavy lifting with me that I'm a writer now, and sometimes my writing's negative too. It's certainly negative about Donald Trump, but is it negative, or am I pointing out his negative characteristics in order to teach people, show people, remind people to be positive and to not be like that, and to fight that negativity? So we can even just kind of have a knee-jerk reaction to negativity when it's like, well, sorry you don't want to talk about this politics thing, but it's going to affect you, and I'm going to speak the truth about it, so there can be some risk in being honest. It comes across as negative, and I'm willing to come across as negative in order to hold up a mirror to what I see happening politically, just as an example. So we can be too quick to judge something as negative that is not negative, or that is definitely not negatively intended, like a joke that can be misunderstood, or someone showing interest romantically that can, oh my gosh, you creeped me out, like, and you might have just been honestly like trying to give someone a compliment. So there's all sorts of things that we can just rubber stamp as negative and jump the gun and cancel and all sorts of things, when there might be a sweet, kind person under there, or someone like me that was sweet and kind too, but that needed a lot of inputs and a lot of development and a lot of lifting up and showing the way in order to become the person that I am now. That still has a lot of upward growth to go, but I definitely show people the way now. And I definitely am kind and patient and loving and like go save animals, you know, do things to protect people and to make them feel helped, or, you know, like take someone in when they need somewhere to go. And, so I look back and I say, well, I wouldn't have been like that, or I might not have gotten to that place if it had not been for people seeing my outward surface negativity and not judging me as such and still accepting me and working with me and finding a way to help me to reach that higher ground, as Stevie Wonder would say. So good luck, everybody. Maybe think about that negativity stuff.